Hi Dean, how are you doing
Hello,
today?
Aaron.
I kind of wanted to talk to you a little bit today just about misconception that people have about loan modifications and foreclosures.
Well, there's several. I think the biggest one is what I call the failure to recognize the dual track process that the banks implement. In other words, people speak to the banks and they have a friendly conversation with the bank and they think everything is going well, and what they don't realize is that the bank, as long as they've been missing payments, is retained counsel to begin the foreclosure process. And so what happens is that people get served foreclosure papers. Now, if they get served the foreclosure papers, they need to answer the papers. Otherwise, the bank can get a default judgment and get a hearing and a sale date fairly quickly. The problem is that because they're having friendly conversations on the phone with the loss mitigation, loan modification people, they think everything is great. So sometimes they come to the office and I meet with them and they tell me they've been served months ago and they haven't answered the complaint. And therefore, it makes it much more difficult to deal with the banks and the bank's lawyers because we never answered the foreclosure complaint.
Right.
It creates a real problem.
Mm-hmm.
The other things I think is people have are hardship. People sometimes they realize that rates are being reduced and mortgages are being changed, and they think, well, that sounds good to me.
Anybody can get
Anybody can do it.
Anybody can get a loan modification.
Well,
not really.
Yeah, not really. This really pertains to your primary residence, and it really means that there's a hardship that's happened. Typically, it's loss of income or medical reasons or what have you, and people have a legitimate reason why they can't pay now, why they could have paid when they took out the mortgage.
Right.
And then they still can make payments, but they get confused about exactly what the program's all about.
Mm-hmm. I know that I've found a lot of the people that we deal with, they've always made their mortgage payment on time. They've never had an issue. Their credit worthiness and credit score is 700 plus, and then something happens. They have an illness or a death in the family. Maybe they've lost their job, and all of a sudden they can't make their mortgage payment. What do you think that those sort of people, should they contact you right away? Should they wait a little bit and try to see if maybe they can get a job, get some sort of bailout, or what should they do?
I think people need assistance in this because the process is a very tricky, confusing process. And as we find when we work our files, is that there's no rhyme or reason at all on how one file is compared to another file. We've seen modifications which I never thought would happen, and we've seen other circumstances where there probably should have been a modification where it didn't occur.
Right.
And so you really don't know. It is not a simple process. When people think that they're just filling out a form, you just submit a form and it takes a life of its own. That's really not the case. I mean, every one of these institutions is different. Who you're dealing with is different. It's not an easy process, and I think people who are not used to doing this get confused. And
They think they can do it on their own. They think they can handle it, but then, it takes a lot of follow-up and a lot of pressure on the mortgage companies for them to carry.
Well, you've done many files. I mean, what do you find when you get into the files?
A lot of times the people that come to us, they've already attempted a loan modification on their own and they failed because it takes a lot of follow-up. They don't realize, okay, they've asked for my bank statements, my tax returns, and whatever. They send it in and they just think that, okay, it's done. And a lot of times, things get lost. There's human error. The mortgage companies, they need to be followed up on, and there needs to be some pressure there. So basically what we do is on a weekly basis, we'll follow up, make sure that the mortgage companies are doing what they need to do, and usually, they see that there's pressure there and that there's a law firm that's working with the client, and they're more likely to give us a response a lot faster than if you were just Joe Schmo off the street asking for a loan modification.